Welcome to Around the World in 80 Bottles. I'm Emily Garrison, and today we're traveling to Italy through your kitchen at home. Now, one thing that I see all the time when people are talking about great fish dishes are the salt encrusted fish, and this seems to be an old Italian tradition. And we're going to mix it up, and we're actually going to try it with a Georgia wine today, but the Georgia winery that we're serving, Wolf Mountain, also comes from a long European tradition of winemaking. So I think it matches well, and more importantly, the flavors of the wine and the food are going to be beautiful together. The fish that we're going to do needs a temperature of 400 degrees, and we're going to serve it with kale chips, and those only need a 300-degree oven. So what I'm going to do is start our kale chips off, and that way we can preheat our oven, get these going, and then turn it up and throw the fish in. And that'll give us just enough time to prep the fish while the temperature in the oven's going up. Now, I kept reading about kale chips. I had friends who kept telling me I'd have to try these out, and I love them. Now, I like kale, and a lot of people don't, and I think it's because for so many years, restaurants would say, oh, just throw a piece of kale in there, and it was a garnish as opposed to something you could eat. And of course, it just looked like that on your plate. But kale is actually a really nutritious, wonderful vegetable. Now, when you chop your kale, I just go straight down, but I like to take out those woody stalks. And the idea is when you bake these off, it's like eating a potato chip. You don't have to throw anything away. So I just take the biggest part of the stalk out, which of course means at the base of your kale, you're going to have a lot to cut out. At the top of your kale, you don't have anything. So I just go through these really quickly. I just fold them over, chop that right out. Now I'm going to toss these in a little bit of olive oil and some sea salt, and then we're going to bake them just for 20 minutes. And then once we get those in the oven, we can focus on getting our fish ready. And this will just make a nice little bed to serve the fish on. A little bit more interesting than just putting it on rice. Now you can do broccoli rabe, you can do any kind of green you want, but I think it needs something green. And I'm just going to toss this. It's going to be about a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to throw some sea salt on there. I'm just going to toss them. So this is live, we're dropping kale. So just give that a good little toss to make sure that they're all coated. A few good turns in there. We're just going to load up our pan and throw that in the oven and bake those for 20 minutes. And now it's time to get our fish ready. Okay, now one of the secrets to fish in a salt crust is to use parchment paper. You just want to have something that's going to keep your fish protected from the pan it's on and really seal it in. And it's funny to use the parchment because this is very similar to the method of cooking the fish in parchment. Either way you do this, it's going to seal in the moisture and really just steam the fish. I've had a lot of people say that a salt crust is not salty. To me, it's a little bit salty. So, and also you've got the complication of going in there and cracking off the crust and breaking it off. So what we've done for you today was actually an idea I flat out stole from Iron Chef, and one of the challengers did parchment on top and then put the salt crust, and all he had to do was lift it off, which was a lot easier, and it also didn't have as much of a salt flavor to it. I'm also going to make this a little bit easier because what I'm doing is 2 fillets that are skin on, but without the head, tail, and the bones. Now, if you want to do this at home with a whole fish, you can do it this way. Make sure it's already scaled and gutted, and all you have to do is take off the head and the tail and pull that spine out. But I thought you might appreciate not having to do that at home. So we've stuck with 2 fillets, but it is a full fish. Now, this only requires minimal preparation because all the flavor is really going to come from that crust. But you want to take some fresh herbs. Thyme is one of the favorites. Parsley's great. And then some lemon, some lime, or some orange peels. and you just put those right in there in between the two fish, or if you have a whole fish, just right there in the middle. So we're just going to stuff it very, very simply. And then we're going to put our other piece of parchment on top. And this is what we're going to load up with our salt crust. Alright, so we've got this all compacted, and all we have to do is add the salt crust. Salt crusts are not complicated. Some egg whites, and I use coarse kosher salt. There is no reason that you have to use expensive sea salt. Go way out of there for anything. Just mix the two together, and then we're going to coat this thoroughly. Okay, so you just want to form that crust all over. And of course we don't have to worry about it rubbing into the fish at all. And we also, one of the things that this parchment has enabled us to do is, if you don't use whole fish, you have to worry about salt getting in anywhere that's not the skin. And so now we're kind of risk-free on getting salt in our fish. And I'm going to take this and simply bake it for 20 minutes. Now, when it's been in there 20 minutes, been in the oven 20 minutes, I'm going to let this rest for 10 minutes before I work with it again, and that's very important. Let's see how we did. I love this part. We've just taken the fish out of the oven. You can see the salt crust is starting to crack already, and it smells phenomenal. So now here's the really cool thing. If you peel this off, you might get half the skin out of it, and then you don't even have to do any work. I can't really show you. Here we go. Okay, it all wants to come up. So we're going to have to use a little spatula. Okay. So yeah, you're not going to have any issue. You can see I'm pulling this right off, and the skin has actually attached itself to the parchment paper, which is great because it means you got all the flavor of cooking with the skin, and you're not going to have to do anything when you're serving this except eat it and enjoy. So I flipped the fish over, and you just got to remove the last of the herbs and the citrus. It may not be an absolute perfect one piece of fish, and it might be, but I think this is pretty awesome. I'm actually going to put a few more of our kale chips on the other side, and I'm just going to serve this in the middle of the table to my guests. And the one thing that I think would really add to this would be that nice glass of wine. And we've chosen the Wolf Mountain Plentitude, which is a blend of Chardonnay and Viognier from Dahlonega in Georgia, and it has a really bright character because it's all stainless steel fermented, and as I mentioned earlier, it's more of a European style winemaking with the blends and really choosing the grapes that are appropriate. Let's see how we did with the fish. So moist. See, that's perfect because there's this little punch of flavor with all the richness of this, with adding all the steaming and putting all those herbs in there, and then with our wonderful herbaceous character in the kale chips. This wine just really matches so well, but it doesn't overwhelm it because it's aged in stainless steel instead of oak. I hope you enjoy this dish as much as I have, and I hope you'll join us next time on Around the World in 80 Bottles when we continue in Italy. Cheers!